Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to DIEM 2014. Hooray! We made it. Thank you so much for coming out this morning. I'm amazed there's so many of you who got up early. But I'm sure you're here because we have such a wonderful panel this morning and a very, very interesting topic. And, you know, the whole point of DIEM is to celebrate the amazing creativity of the West Hollywood Design District. And we like to think of DIEM as the thinking man's design symposium because we try to propose really pertinent topics that are meaningful to our design, art, and fashion communities. And of course, DIEM is free, but most importantly, we hope it's a very informative day for you, and you'll walk away feeling inspired or educated on a topic of importance to you. So thank you all for being here, and I hope you'll do as many panels today as you can. But we're starting this morning with this panel, of course, is called California, the Last Frontier of Creative Freedom in American Design. And we're going to explore that question this morning. I will introduce our fabulous panelists, and we'll speak for about 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions for about 10 to 15 minutes. So that will be our format. With us this morning are two of my favorite people in the Los Angeles design community. Roman Alonso.
Hello.
I'm sure you know who they are, but I'll give you a brief introduction. So Roman is one of the 4 founding members of Commune Design, a very important design firm in Los Angeles. And I write for a lot of international publications, European publications, and they're a great favorite of the Europeans, too, all of their work. And just very, very briefly, Roman came from a background in publishing. He worked at Connoisseur and Mirabella magazines in New York back in the day. Then worked in PR in New York for Barney's and Isaac Mizrahi. Moved to Los Angeles in 1998. And I'm giving you this background because, you know, today we're also going to discuss a little bit, you know, New York versus Los Angeles. And Roman co-founded Grey Bull Press, which was an art publishing company specializing in photographic books, and then formed Commune with his 3 partners in 2004. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
And then there's Mayor Russ, who you probably all know. And Mayor is the West Coast editor of Architectural Digest. And previously, he was the design and culture editor of the Los Angeles Times Magazine. That was the editor-in-chief of which was Nancy Claire, who's sitting here today. Mayor's another New York transplant, moved to Los Angeles in 2007. Mayor's one of the, and don't blush, but one of the great legendary design writers of the design world. He was editor at House and Garden in New York for many, many years. Had a column there called The Testy Tastemaker that has gone down in design history. And before that, at a very young age, editor-in-chief of Interior Design magazine. So we're very, very fortunate to have Mayor on the West Coast and part of the Los Angeles design community.
And I'm also a favorite of the Europeans.
Yes. So we want to explore the question of the creative freedom that California and specifically Los Angeles offers. California and Los Angeles in particular have always been considered a pioneer land with the cultural freedom and space to create what you want. You know, a lot of people talk about the influx right now of creative types, you know, young artists, young makers who are coming to Los Angeles, fleeing New York. The rents are less expensive here. They can have more space. They, you know, the weather's wonderful, so they can, you know, it helps facilitate their work. So many people are saying that, you know, this is the place to come now to explore, to maximize your creative freedom. But just going back to the fact that historically it's always been that way, is that still true today? Is that changing? Is it just the freedom of California that's always been, or is that changing now today? Is that a new thing today? And I'm going to start with Roman. And one of the reasons why I want to start with Roman is Commune just published their first book, which is an amazing book. Everybody should get it. And the title of the book is Commune, Designed in California. So what are your thoughts about creative freedom in Los Angeles?
Like you said, I think it's always been an open field here. It's the Wild West still. And I think that's always shown through. I mean, that's why there is so much great stuff and also so much horrible stuff, because there really are no rules, and people can do whatever they want, for better or for worse. I think it is changing. I think that people, you know, when people start looking at something more closely, it starts changing. So we are fortunate enough now to have everyone looking at us, and that changes things. When I moved out here 16 years ago, we complained endlessly about how we were treated like second city, and how nothing great came here, and how we didn't have any culture and all these things. And now I kind of wish, in some ways, we were back then. Obviously, that's not all true, but I mean, it's great to have, you know, great things coming through town and interesting people to work with, and that's great. But I don't think that 10 years ago we would have been able to create Commune the way we did had we been under a microscope. We really kind of took advantage of the fact that we were somewhere else, and that nobody was looking at us, and that we took full advantage of the fact that we could do whatever we wanted. And we created our own rules as to how we handled projects, how we build for projects, how we just made up our own way of working and process. And nobody was telling us that there was a certain way to do it.
But how do you think it's changed in the last 10 years? What have the changes been? Is it what I mentioned before? Is it just this influx of, you know, young creatives, or is it?
Well, no, I think it's the media looking at us and paying more attention. It's people wanting something, they don't even know what it is. That I guess
that LA has to offer.
Evokes.
That LA has to offer as opposed to anywhere else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people didn't used to look at what was happening here. In fact, they would turn away from it. Now, for whatever reason, they are looking this way, and that makes a difference.
And Mayor, what do you think? I mean, you've been here now for 6 years. Do you think there's been a change in the 6 years that you've been here?
I think there has been a change in the 6 years, but not as profound a change as many would have us believe. When I see the cover of W magazine, like, it's all about Destination Los Angeles, it's all happening in Los Angeles, and I get press releases and saying the art world is, you know, LA is the hot burning center, and it's simply not true. Okay, and that's great, and there's no reason, there's this urge to look at Los Angeles in comparison to New York, and I think Roman is absolutely right that part of what makes LA so special is its un-New Yorkness. It's, that it isn't such a crucible of like art and commerce and at each other all the time. And I think you're absolutely right. I don't think Commune could have planted its seed, and flourished quite the same way, because you did make up the rules. And when all those years I was in New York, there were lots of design firms that started out talking about, we're going to do things differently. We're going to do interiors, we're going to do some branding, we're going to do graphics, we're going to do products, and all these things will be in equal measure a part of what we do. And in very short order, those firms figured out that in a marketplace as specific as New York, and because of New York's geographical location vis-a-vis Europe, it's also, the energy there is different, and the modes of commerce are different. But all those firms in very short order started, we're basically an interior design firm. We might do a little graphic identity if we have commercial clients, but it was not the kind of place that was really open to some funky, fresh, new idea of how to work. And that's one of the great things about Los Angeles, and I hope we're not losing that in the rush to, I hear Michael Govan talking about I want to build a Frank Gehry high-rise on Wilshire and Fairfax. New York has one, and I'm jealous. I want one too. And I think, one, the Frank Gehry high-rise in New York sucks, and B, why would we want, that kind of density, that kind, and I'm not saying that, there's plenty of great Frank Gehry. LA, God knows, has it. But high-rise, this idea that we must build, we must...
Well, exactly, because if what's, making LA, one of the gallery owners in New York that I spoke to likened LA to Berlin. He said, LA is the Berlin of the United States, in as much as it's where all the creatives are going now, the artists, the makers, and everything of interest creatively is really bubbling here in Los Angeles. He said, but the galleries who come here, or the commerces that deal with the creative worlds, they're coming here just to do projects, or just to kind of have showcases, to do kind of think tanks. But the actual market for all of these things that are being created is not here. And he likened it to Berlin, because Berlin's kind of the same scenario, in as much as all the creative stuff is happening there, but you still have to have a gallery in Paris or London to sell anything. So if this is indeed, true of Los Angeles, which I believe it to be, I've interviewed enough, amazing artists and decorative artists, makers, creators, to know that they have flocked here for the low rents and the space and the weather and the creative freedom. But are we going to lose that as fast as we've gained it, with, for example, rents starting to skyrocket?
Roman?
Well, there's always gonna be more room here, just physically. It's more open. But it will shake out. I mean, a lot of it is hype, and it always shakes out in the end. It's happened in many other places. But I think that people will always find an openness here, because geographically it is open. And when I first moved out here, and I've said this before, I've never credited the person that said it to me, but it was Christina Kim from DOSA. When I first moved out here, I wrote things for the New York Times Magazine, and we interviewed her, Lisa Eisner and I. And she said something to me that always stuck, which was, you know, the difference between New York and LA is that in New York, you're always looking up. You're always going up, you're always climbing up, everything is up, up, up. Here, it's all out. There's a horizon line. So of course, there's more possibility. And it's true. And so geographically, that will always be the case. You just have to get in your car and drive out to the desert and you see it. Or go out to Santa Monica and look out into the ocean and you see it. And if you feel it, then you take advantage of it. But not everyone will see that. Not everyone will stay. Not everyone will understand it. So it will shake out.
And is there, I mean, is California the last bastion of creative freedom in America? Are there other places that are you know, becoming, you know, remarkable places of creative freedom and inspiration, more so than LA?
What do you think?
I mean, more so than California?
Sure, of course. You know, The Last Frontier of Creative Freedom is a great title, and here we are.
Got everybody here this morning.
Got everybody here. It looks good on a poster. But, you know, let's face it, there are many places of, you know, locuses of creative ferment in this country. I just got back from Dallas, you know, and Dallas is, you know, super crazy and freaky and really interesting. I love Dallas, but they had this really interesting art community of these kids who can't afford New York or even Brooklyn. You know, in New York, obviously, the creativity, the people who are making and doing have all seeped out of Manhattan and into the boroughs and further out into the boroughs. And there will come a point when even all the boroughs, there's going to be no Gowanus that will be affordable to some schmo coming out of college who like needs a couple of years to live in some hole and think and make, which is, you know, what I was lucky enough to have had when I got out of college in '47. So yeah, there are many places, but you know, so much of this is about market forces, the real estate here. So yeah, so these neighborhoods are being turned over, and in 10 years, downtown, you know, that whole Michigan, Michael Maltson thing, and like all of that will be just completely different.
Yeah.
Will be completely different. When I walk around Echo Park, around the lake now, which is great, and I'm not saying, you know, I don't have this faux nostalgia for, gosh, back in the day, you used to find a used condom and get shot. It was so great. It's really lovely, but there's this fragile mix of Mexican families, of older Asian families, of hipsters, and that balance can't live for too many more years because the real estate prices are going up, and eventually you'll get a more homogeneous thing. But there are plenty of places where creative freedom happens. I'm just interested in the specific kind that happens here.
Well, okay, so maybe the rents are going up and we're losing a little bit more of our creative freedom. But what about the market here for the art that's being produced, the art and the design and that's being produced? Because this is a big issue with Los Angeles.
Yeah, well, Roman, I know it's your turn, but I need to say something. I need to say...
Means,
I mean,
do.
you know, because let's talk about the Haas brothers and David Wiseman, for example. You know, two of our very celebrated designers, creative, decorative artists, like we can call them. They have gained incredible international fame, but due to their gallery in New York, to being promoted by their gallery in New York, and their clientele, the collectors who collect them are not here. So, you know, traditionally that is the problem with Los Angeles, that the collector base just isn't here. So do you think we can foresee that changing?
Roman, hit it.
I think it is what it is. I mean, for us, we work very insularly here. So we've engaged those people to work with us on projects here. We don't travel to the art fairs. We don't even go to New York for the furniture fair. We never have. When we've gone, we've gotten there and been like, what are we doing here? We have no interest in it. Yeah, we'll go for a client if they ask us to, but you know what? In the end, it turns out we end up doing it all here. So it really depends on how you conduct your own business and the clients that you work with. I have had clients that are collectors and won't buy anything here.
Because
They
of
won't.
the stigma of buying in LA,
Well-
or because of the glamour of flying to Paris or London to do it?
Status. And I did work with one in particular who did purchase a couple of things here after he went to New York and saw them there.
More
so you can see that
expensive.
it makes no sense,
Right.
right? So I think it's a process of education. It's what we all do with our clients. You have to convince them that that's silly. Why are you doing that? And convince them of the value of the work because it has it, because it's inherent. And also try to make them understand that it's best when they buy things when they feel good about them, when they actually want them for the right reasons. No easy task, trust me. But if you make that one of your part of your philosophy of how you work with people, then you do it. And we do it.
But when you say we don't go to the fairs in Europe or New York, we don't need to, is that because you're finding what you need here? Or
Yes.
because all the talent is here, all the creativity is here, all the great stuff is here too?
Well, also, we work with dealers in New York and dealers in Europe. We tend to do business with them, electronically or
Right,
from here.
Right.
And we do purchase things from them, but we try to center our business here. We don't dilute it by going all over the world. Mostly because we don't want to go all over the world. We want to stay here. So I don't know. You choose how to do your own thing. We've chosen to do it this way. It's worked out for us. We're lucky, I guess. But our clients do respond to it.
And actually, just going back to the title of your book, why did you title it Commune Designed in California?
I was adamantly against a subtitle. Abrams needed a subtitle, and we always go for the obvious.
Right.
So, okay, you want a subtitle? Design in California. That's
Right.
the subtitle. And they accepted it. But it is the obvious. We do work here. We design everything here. We really don't design anything anywhere else. We do a lot of projects outside of California, but they're all designed here and with a mindset that starts here. We're not looking at inspiration outside of here. We're not, it's like we love to travel so that we can gain education and really learn about, get references for our work. But everything we do is really with a mindset that comes from our lives here, how we live here. And that's what we actually put out. It's a certain type of living. It's how we live.
But Mayor, do you think that LA, Los Angeles, California, is affording a special kind of creativity today that we can be very proud of, and that the rest of the world is observing and looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. There were always amazing things coming out of LA and California. Regardless. Sorry. Oh. English. Regardless of what the media was saying, but all these things that we're talking about, they're all, double-edged swords. I complain that LA, there was no Los Angeles Antiques Fair this year because, nobody cared? Nobody, that there's not one super high-end antique show in this city, in this vast,
This vast city with lots of money and a lot of houses.
But the difference,
and yet,
there is a difference in the collector community here, and you see it in philanthropy as well. Older established cities have a different idea about what civic mindedness means in terms of philanthropy. Even Dallas, I could not believe the art community, the collectors there, despite all being like rabid right-wing nut jobs, they love their contemporary art, and they are incredibly supportive of their cultural institutions. They take great pride in them. They take great pride in having REM build something in Dallas, and having Morphosis, another homegrown, very distinctly, I think, West Coast-minded operation, build something there. And it's very different here. It's very, very different here. For all these, for all of the vast wealth, particularly in the entertainment industry, a lot of these people, you know this. I'm not telling you if you're a designer here in town, like, quality is hard for them to understand. Why you would spend something, simply, oh, something's going. It's just a different. Yeah. It's just a different idea. And yes, there are more cultivated. The memo went out to all the rich people. You have to have contemporary art in your home to signify like status and taste and discernment. So God bless you. Everybody's got a Richard Prince. Like if one more designer's like they've got a really edgy collection, I'm like, Richard Prince? No. But there's something kind of great about that provincialism at the same time.
Do you think that in that case, then it does help that all these galleries are opening spaces here? And is that...
I think it helps. I mean, I think, when a lot of the media looks at all the galleries and they're like, oh, Matthew Marks is coming, has come to LA, and this one is, Gavin Brown and Michelle Macaron. These are all major players on the contemporary art scene. Mm-hmm. But one gets the impression that they're here to sort of skim the cream off the top. The serious collectors, they already do business with out of New York. And, so they'll have some interesting shows and try to, Yeah.
But perception, I mean, in the end, turns out to be reality, I suppose.
I'm just looking for, the more substance of it. Some of the early ones came and went. L&M had that amazing gallery, and poof, went away. Perry Rubenstein, that's a whole other mishigas, as Judge Judy would say. But like I said, it's this balance of wanting to define civic pride, like we want Matthew Marks to be putting on really interesting shows of contemporary art here. But what we don't want is the homogeneity of the international world of taste, which is increasingly making things look the same, city to city, country to country.
Well, that is really, and we'll wrap this up with this question, and then we'll open it up for questions from all of you. But, is the idea of regional style or architecture, kind of obsolete in our global society now anyway?
I'd like not to think that.
You'd like not to think that. Well, you guys are, Commune's kind of living proof that it isn't, because, what
it
you do is very, very inspired by your place, California.
Well, I mean, it ends, in the end, it's demand. It's what people want that you actually end up having to provide. We work with people that want what we do.
Which is California. In their eyes, is California living.
And that's a very small number of people. We're a small firm. But unfortunately, yes, most people do gravitate to a more homogeneous idea of luxury, and we fight it all the time. But that's the way it is. I mean, all you have to do is, it's most apparent actually in commercial projects, in hospitality. We do a lot of that work, and it's constant you know, people that come to you and they want something different, they want what you do, and then in the end what they want is that vanilla.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, tastes are what they are, trends.
Should we open it up to questions now? Yeah? Is this a good time? Francis? Okay. Do we have a mic for the questions, or ask the question and I'll repeat it? Okay, good.
I wonder if you gentlemen have any insight into the ongoing Anybody Can Design LACMA contest, where every couple of years a brooding European architect, puts out a plan and the public sees it and reacts with indifference, and then the next brooding European architect comes along. What is all that about?
So the question is, the contest to redesign LACMA, that seems to be a recurring issue. Any comments on that?
Sure, I'll have a comment on that. The LACMA thing, I see so much as being a part of, this kind of, I want an Hermes scarf, I want this kind of dress, I want this kind of car, and I want a Herzog and de Meuron, I want a Peter Zumthor, I want a, that somehow there is validation in having an international brand name come here. And, so what do we get? We get not Renzo Piano's best work. We get like some weird Renzo for the Broad and the Resnick pavilions, some kind of California, I think it's more casual there. I'm going to put some red in that. I'm going to red it up.
But really the big question is why don't they use one of our fabulous homegrown architects?
But, I wouldn't say that should be necessarily what they need to do as well. It's part of being, a major international city, to think about who would be best for it, but who would be best for it who actually understands what happens here. And I think that the general meh of the reaction to the Peter Zumthor thing is because, it's sort of a blob, and now it's a blob that hops across Wilshire. And maybe it's great, but, and who knows what it would look like? Who knows what happened after, they lavish millions on Peter Zumthor to actually articulate what that design is? Well, you can't really tell those things, but they certainly haven't done a fantastic job in making the city understand why it needs to change, one, and why the design that they are pursuing is the right one for Los Angeles. I mean, in particular, the numbers start going, you start running those numbers and, thinking about what else this city needs. You start thinking about, gosh, maybe you could build it for less than $1 billion and throw a couple of million into acquisitions to shore up the collections in areas where they're weak. But, there's the museum world, it's all about gigantism. Like the galleries, you can't have just one. It's got to be bigger. You've got to have one over there and one here.
Thanks, Mayor. Are there any more questions? In the back? Oh, Julie.
Talking about the difference between having to be in New York and having that be the international launch pad, and you're flying to see New York to then buy it here. What do you think it would take for LA to be able to be that kind of launch pad, where people are looking at LA not just as a launch, but it's an asset to be from LA, as opposed to they made it despite artists.
I don't know. I have to think of the possibility that it'll never change. I don't know. I think people have always looked our way for inspiration. Maybe that's what our role is. I don't know. I have no idea how that would change, because it has to do with changing people and culture, and that changes.
Yeah, and then the geographical imperative of, what LA should be doing is being the international springboard to the east. I mean, if somebody, if some mastermind was thinking about, how to structure the framework of cultural production here, that the East is, this is China's century, right? God bless them. They can take the century. But there are possibilities over there but in a mindset, we still sort of look east. We look east to New York, and from there to Europe. And it's changing somewhat, but, I like the idea of LA still not being like, this just kind of machine that produces culture and ships it out to the world. Like, I like the idea that I can keep my tiny little house and, there won't be a McMansion next door immediately because of the imperative of the market.
And that perhaps we still make things by hand here.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any other questions? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. To pioneer through? That the art that's produced in Los Angeles.
Well, yeah.
So the question or the comment is that the art scene in Los Angeles is so strong that it can help shift these perceptions that we're talking about. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I have a comment on that. I mean, I'm always astonished at the obsessive navel-gazing of our cultural institutions, the endless PST, Pacific Standard Time, LA and this, LA and Mexico, LA and, like there's some sort of obsessive need to, plant a flag that says, woo, important stuff is happening here. Unfortunately, too much of that is focused on what happened in yesteryear. So in architecture, all this great mid-century, like, Palm Springs is hobbled by this, this albatross of like, oh my God, if it isn't an Albert Frey, so I'm like, think of a new idea of how to live in the desert. Think of something else. And it's the same, I think, for the art world. I mean, Light and Space and this one and Robert Irwin and the Ferris Gallery and this one and all of... I would like to see a more genuine focus on cultural production today. And I think there are groups in LA that do that very well, but they seem to operate outside of the mainstream cultural institutions here. And it would be nice if there was a bit more, I'm going to say it, synergy between like what is being produced today and the cultural institutions that just endlessly package and repackage the past glories of Southern California and send them down the runway.
You definitely have an opportunity, because there is opportunity here. It's just how you look at it. I mean, it's like, just don't look at anything else. Just look forward, out. And so that gives you that. And you can hear. It's very basic, I think. What Mayor's saying is like, don't look back. Don't look across the way to the other side. Just look at your own stuff. Look around you, your own life, and then make something great out of it. Look at what you have, your resources. because you do have certain freedoms here that are not in other places. There are advantages, so just feel lucky.
And that is the perfect note to end on. Thank you, Roman. That's perfect. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you.